we'll get that posted to Brian's YouTube and get the link and everything up on our Trailblazer community site as well. I am going to share the right screen. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm Jen Bowen. For those of you who don't know me, I lead our Madison, Wisconsin Trailblazer community group along with Brian. Squire and Rachel, we tag team it with our friends over. I got to get a better picture for Rachel. We tag team it with our friends over in Milwaukee. And typically we host a meeting every other month. We are not always consistent, but we do try. So we're glad that you all are here and able to make it. Why are we here? Well, we're here to be successful. There's no way that you can know every single thing about Salesforce, and we want to share and collaborate and learn together. There's so much out there, and we can only succeed together. So that is really kind of our goal as we host these sessions. We're always asking you for ideas, speakers, topics. If you have something cool you want to show off or you have a lesson learned, please share it. I will be sharing my lesson learned later today. But we definitely would love for you to contact us and let us know if you have a topic or something you would like to share. In fact, our next July session, we are trying to put together a quick demo of some cool things people have built. I know that Brian has an intern that he wanted to bring on to share some of the things that they've been working on. I've got a really cool quick hit thing that I can share, but we would love for you to share other things that you've done or you've built that you think would be useful for the group, small or big, it doesn't matter. So let us know if you're interested in that. I will post something about it on the community group as well, so that you can contact us and we can get you slotted in. There's so many of us out there. It's not possible for me to list everyone, but I listed a couple of big ones here. Obviously, the Milwaukee group. Um, there is still a Salesforce Saturday happening in Milwaukee. The last I looked up on Meetup, Salesforce Saturday in Madison. We sometimes meet. We're not consistent. That's probably my fault, not EJ's. There's a higher education group that is very active. And then the other one that I always want to mention is the MVP office hours. So Squire participates in that MVP office hours where you can bring any kind of questions or even help facilitate conversations on that virtual meetup. So I would definitely check that out as well. More things about community. There's always community events happening. There's a link here, and this deck will get posted on our community too. I'm going to pull up this link just to run through this because I can't possibly know all of the things. One that's happening in our area is Midwest Dreamin', July 19th, or excuse me, 17th through the 19th up in Minneapolis. You can see all of these events hosted by the community for the community, volunteer led by user group leaders or MVPs or just Salesforce enthusiasts. Um, and also another one I want to point out is Witness Success down in Louisville. So you can check this calendar out. There's a lot happening in October and so on and so forth. So I would definitely, if you can make a dream an event or community held event, I encourage it. It's definitely something that I always find value in. I want to open the floor quickly. If anybody has any job opportunities, celebrations, maybe a certification, just something that they want to celebrate or anything else they'd like to share. It's a quiet crew. If you do have comment, this is supposed to be interactive. So if you feel more comfortable posting in our chat, post in our chat your questions as we go through things, or feel free to unmute yourself, interrupt me, interrupt Brian, he loves that, and ask us your questions. So with that, we are going to be talking about some of the summer 24 highlights. We're a little late in the game. Summer's been released for a while now, but it's always good to revisit some of these topics. And one of the things I want to remind you of is that there is a really great resource out on the Trailblazer community called Release Readiness Trailblazers. Fantastic group. Very interactive, very much there's posts, multiple posts every single day out here, people talking about release notes, and they have resources too. They have got links to release readiness live videos. They also have overview decks and things like that, all about the release. So don't feel like you're ever in the dark or that you have to wait for us. I always encourage you to check this out and also check out the release notes themselves. We focus on core platform. We're focusing more on sales, service, flows. We'll talk about those kind of release items. But if you're using a different cloud, if you're using features and functionality that we don't talk about, it's a good idea to spend some time reviewing what is meaningful to you in those release notes. All right, so permissions and user management. So there's some quick hits here. Typically, my fashion is to talk a little bit about what I have and then do demos. Some of these things are really hard to demo, so I'm sorry to disappoint you if you were hoping for some real good live demos today. I've got a lot of screenshots and things to talk through, but not a lot of demos just in this release for some of these items, but definitely encourage you to check it out in your org because you've got summer already. One of which is view summary. They are adding view summary on a lot of things with user access, with profiles, with permission sets. And I gotta tell you, I love this feature. In fact, I was just using it yesterday to troubleshoot why someone couldn't see something, and it was fantastic. Now with just really one click within users' permissions and access, if you go to a user record, you can see this view summary button at the top. And by clicking on that, you can see all of the user's permissions, object permissions that they have, field permissions that they have, custom permissions, and so on and so forth, group memberships, what access they have to folders and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing that we can see all those objects, create, edit, write, delete, field level security, all now within just one click instead of us having to dig through the different aspects of setup to get that information. Fantastic tool. We also get something like that for public groups. Again, a summary of when you're adding people to users to public groups, you can now quickly identify what you're granting them access to. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, I think it's this public group, but now I can actually look. Does this public group have these list views? What kind of sharing rules are there? All of that information is more at my fingertips for me to quickly troubleshoot and be sure I'm adding people to the right public groups for the access that they need. Another really great one is permission sets and permission set groups. This is the one that saved my bacon yesterday. So now, when we're as admins, we really do need to understand like what permission sets are within different permission set groups. And this is able to give us those overviews really quickly. All of the within your permission sets, you can see all of the groups that it's assigned to. You can see exactly down to the field level permission, your custom permissions, which I use tons of. So this is able to give me that view. I would actually I should go look out on the Idea Exchange because when I was troubleshooting yesterday, I actually wanted to do the reverse of this and go into a custom permission and see what permission sets it was in rather than the other way around, knowing the permission set and digging into each one to find where my custom permissions were. So I think that's something I'm going to add to the Idea Exchange if it's not there already, because that would have been really helpful for me as I was troubleshooting yesterday. But not quite there with that reverse engineering, but I know that you can query some of that stuff too. This is a step in the right direction, making our lives easier. Oh, I think I have one more. Hold on. Oh, user access policy. So So I haven't used this yet. So I actually haven't used this in practice at all, but you can quickly configure user access to fire on user create or even update. So it's auto assign, it allows you to auto assign certain, permissions. You set the parameters, what permission set groups, any kind of access to like manage packages, those types of things within even queues, I think it lets you add within setting up your access policies. So you can kind of create different entitlements based on user attributes, which I know I've seen in the past um people creating flows to do this for them, and I think that you can leverage this a little bit more in order to do that. I'd be curious if anyone else has played with this tool yet. It's now GA, so we've had it in pilot and everything. I have not had my hands on it yet. So I would love to know if other people have been using it yet and if they found any value.
If you don't mind me speaking to it a little bit, I just got hands-on with this one. Excuse me. When we were doing our process builder to flow migration. So like you said, you can use flow, but we were even more old-fashioned with our process builders that we were migrating to flow. And instead of clogging up another flow with these, we moved them over. A couple things that I found really nice about them is that you can use them for automation, but you can also do like a one-time use of it. So you can
Oh.
preview and then assign. And that way, if like you have users who are nervous about automatically setting things, or you want to only assign it to a couple people, you can look at that role, do a checkbox of the ones you want to assign it to, and then just manually assign it in bulk. So, a couple use cases there.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great tips. I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
What else do I have? Just some quality of life, I would say here as far as permissions go. They've pulled out the monitor login history permission and the freeze user permission. And even the login history, it looks like here too. So this grants access to users for this level of access without giving them, full admin rights or other permissions were tied to these things before. So now they've pulled them out separately. So if you've got someone, maybe in HR, that if they're doing an offboarding or something like that, and you want to give them access to go in and freeze users as people are being offboarded, you can actually assign those permissions now with a little bit more granular access. Hey, couple of quick hits for Lightning App Builder. Um, I'm super excited about this one just because I had a hack that I used for this, but essentially we now have blank spaces. Thank goodness for dynamic forms in Salesforce. So you can find it on the Fields tab when you are viewing your dynamic forms. There's now a blank space. Apparently it is considered a field against like the count. There's a limit on I think it's 100 fields per region within your pages. So that does count towards that, but it doesn't count against the component page limit. So I still think there's a lot of flexibility there. And if you're using more than 100 fields in a per region, we should probably talk because there's probably a different way to split things up. But I'm showing here just different alignment strategies. So without aligned fields horizontally set, you can see that the blank space on the left-hand side, um, it's just a smaller space, and you can see that it's not aligning with the billing address. However, if you do use align fields horizontally setting, it expands that blank space to match up with its partner fields. So then that way, all the rest of them align, like parent, account, and website align together throughout the page. So it's nice with that horizontal setting to align your fields appropriately based on their kind of sister field, if you will, on the page. Um, I'm also really excited about this because my hack was I had a custom field that I had to create on multiple different objects. It didn't look great when you were in admin because you would see the little pencil icon and things like that. And then also it was taking up a field limit for me. So I'm excited that I don't have to create that hack anymore. And now I got to go find where all my hacky blank spaces are and replace them with this new one. Something like a blank space just gets me so jazzed. I get very excited about these little quality of life things. Other Lightning app builder, I do have my one demo here where you can set conditional visibility for individual tabs. We're going to take a look at that. Apparently, you can now create rich text headings in your rich text components. I'm not really sure. I don't really see a ton of value there, but I'm like, okay, cool. That's something worth mentioning. I do like being able to see my density, my compact density when I'm configuring a Lightning page, especially when I'm working with aligning things appropriately. Now I can see if it's compact or if it's that comfy view and kind of what that will look like. So that is very nice. And when you are adding new custom fields, you can, there's a new page through setup where you can just automatically get it on your dynamic form. It just puts it in the first section, bottom left-hand corner, if I remember correctly. So you're still going to have to go edit your Lightning page and then move it to where you want it to be. But it's just one less thing if you are trying to quickly add some fields and quickly get them on the page. So I'm going to look at this little tiny but very exciting demo with you on um, the tab visibility. So let me get my Salesforce org up here. So here I am logged into Salesforce. I'm on the Acne account, and currently you can see, and let me just zoom in a little bit. Currently you can see that this type is a prospect. Well, when we change this prospect and we've closed one our opportunity to a customer, I want a new tab for my contracts to show up. There's no reason for contracts to show up until they actually are a customer of ours and a contract has been sent for signature. So by editing this to customer and clicking save, ta-da! We can now see that dynamic tab display within the platform. So how does this get configured? From setup, if we go into the edit page, this is pretty easy, aligns with all of the other component visibility filters. So as I am selected on this tab component, I can see my contracts and I can see that there's a little eye icon there because I've got my filter set up for that specific visibility. Pretty nice, good quality of life, only display information for your users at the time that you need to show them, right? The other thing too, just to show you really quickly, I'm going to pop in here. Look at my beautiful headings. We now have, wow, just amazing. That was my quick demo. Thanks. Some miscellaneous things to mention. Um, Search, improved search. This is now something that is generally available. This actually was very helpful for me the other day too. I don't know if you are aware, but you can actually um, you can actually set up your search results for your users to always display specific objects. So I know that Einstein search is always learning based on what users actually have searched and clicked on. But I know when you have like a new user and they haven't really used Salesforce a whole lot yet, it doesn't know that they go to accounts and contacts constantly. You can actually set this up so it will start surfacing that for them right away. The other thing that this does, okay, maybe I'm going to demo it. because I don't know how else to explain it, but this actually saved me the other day because I created a new object and I was expecting to, let me go into setup. I was expecting to be able to use global search to find this new field that I created. And it wasn't working. And I was like, why isn't this working? So I actually went into the search manager and I created a search configuration. When I created that search configuration in this section, you can see my always search was set up, but I could go to those records and then it actually tells me what's searchable and what's not. And I thought that that was really useful insight. What I had created was a formula field, and apparently formula fields are not global searchable. And I didn't remember that. So when I was like, what is happening? This kind of showed me like, oh, Jen, it's not searchable because, well, it's a formula field. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So it could just kind of helped me troubleshoot that. But a very nice quality of life, I think, for admins as well. Field history tracking has a new interface. I actually didn't see this in the release notes, but I saw it on the release readiness deck. So I was like, oh, maybe this was here before and I just didn't realize it. So I thought I would mention it. In setup, if you go look for field history tracking, you can actually look object by object and then see very quickly what fields are being tracked instead of having to go through object manager, fields, click on field history, go out, go to the next one, go to the next one. You can actually do it in like a list view now, which I think is fantastic. Um, if you have a lot of money and you are using Einstein AI type products, they now have a syntax error Einstein for formulas, which actually allows, if you have a syntax problem or something like that, Einstein will make recommendations to you on how to fix your formula fields. So that was an interesting thing. I was messaging Brian. I was like, "Where is this?" And he's like, "Oh, it's an add-on." And I was like, "Oh, yes, uh, it's available." That was the key word for me to know there. Um, I wanted to mention that they have an update on URLs for list views rather than using like an ID 18 within the URL of a list view. They are now using the developer name, making it a little bit easier to read and understand what you're looking at. Um, I was curious about this one because I was like, oh no, are all of my URLs going to break because I've got links and documentation and all that kind of stuff? No, it does redirect. So that was a saving grace for me. And then the other one I'm excited about for quality of life, I've been wanting this for a really long time, but for your dynamic forms, if you go into a field and you ask it, where is this used? It would tell you that it was on a Flexi page. That's like their name of their Lightning pages, but it wouldn't tell you which one. And it would just give you a number. And it was like impossible basically to know what page layout it was on. They are now telling you the name of the page, which again, fantastic. Makes my life as an admin a little bit easier for troubleshooting. Release updates. All right, you guys, we need to have a talk. If you're not looking at anything in the release, you should at least look at your release updates. If you go into setup in Salesforce, here I'll show you quick. If you go into setup in your Salesforce org and you search release, they used to be called critical updates. I wish they wouldn't have changed that name because I feel like that's just more power. But you can see all of your release updates in here. Remember that this tool is to help you make sure that you are prepared for these release updates. It's important because if you don't pay attention, things will break and you don't know why. And that might have happened to someone I know this last week or with this release. Um, one item that came up was verifying email addresses in order for us to receive emails out of Salesforce and email notifications. This release update um, caught me off guard because I wasn't paying enough attention. So apparently, so there's a setting in Salesforce that will email you when somebody assigns you a task. It like when someone delegates you out a task, it'll email you. It's a personal setting people have set up. My users love it. They want to get an email when they are assigned a task in Salesforce. Great. It works perfect. Nice. Until it didn't. With this release update, one thing I realized is that not all of my users had verified their email address in Salesforce. Well, they don't really need to because we have single sign-on and all that kind of stuff set up. So we didn't have to go through that process when we set up new users particularly. We did have our DKIM set up as well, so that way individuals didn't need to verify their email address. It should just work. So I was very confused when all of a sudden my users submitted about 20 tickets saying they weren't getting their task notifications. There was another setting, and I'm telling you guys, it is always a checkbox when there's a problem in Salesforce. There was another setting that we missed when we set up our um, when we set everything up in the past. And I finally found it after opening a case with Salesforce and rereading the documentation. It was actually buried within a link of a link to tell me, oh, by the way, you have to go also check this little checkbox in your deliverability settings. And there we have it, fixed the issue. Did I spend my Saturday trying to troubleshoot this for too many hours I don't want to mention? Yes, I did. Pay attention to your release updates. Emily, I'm sorry that came up for you too. Um, sounds like you had quite the adventure as well. So release updates is definitely something to pay attention to. There were a couple other ones that I pulled out. There's a lot of them out there, so I didn't pull out too many. But a couple of things as far as with this update, users first of all, creating and verifying your default no reply, making sure that that is set up appropriately so you don't have any other email deliverability issues. MFA is on. If you do not, we've been talking about MFA for years. So now it is on. Salesforce admins get app notifications about it. So for the love of God, if you haven't had your MFA turned on, I hope it is now. Um, and then enforcing view roles and role hierarchy permissions when editing public lists. So with this update, only users with the view roles and role hierarchy permission can see or select this from um, when they're editing public list views and for visibility. So that's something else. If that's something that you're using or something like that, definitely want to check out the release notes and make sure that that hasn't broken or is causing you any trouble.
Jen, can
Mhm.
you, I'm a little bit nervous about that now. So this is list views. So there's those three options on list views. It's just me, all with access, and then roles. Will it still give them the all with access, which is the bane of my existence on list views
Hmm.
because we use a community and my users always want to tick that all with access box. So will it, is there anything that removes that option? I wish I could just remove it.
Nothing that I'm aware of, Diane. This is literally just, hey, you have to be able to see the roles and or the role hierarchy to be able to share to a
Okay.
role hierarchy. Nothing else changes.
Okay. Because now I'm thinking my users are gonna, if they don't have that, they're just gonna pick all with access, and now I'm gonna end up with a bunch of list views in my community that I don't want. Okay. Something else to look at. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess technically you could probably replace it with a public group.
Depends on your strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we do have public groups and use them more than roles in the role hierarchy. So maybe I'm okay. I'll do some digging. Thank you though.
I am looking at the org. So maybe I'm missing this too, and maybe it's just my org. It's uh who can see it's this, right, Brian? It's like the sharing settings for a list view. So like we have these options. I might not have, here's the group. That's what I'm looking for, I think.
So yours
So
isn't allowing the roles, it's just allowing public groups.
that's what it looks like right now, but I'm not sure how that was different than what I had before, I guess. But it might be just my settings and what I'm actually allowing in general. Hmm. I'm not 100% sure. I might dig into that a little bit too, because now I'm really curious if I'm not understanding the way that this is worded either. So maybe we'll post it to the community on like, hey, this is what I found out and dig into it a little bit deeper because I'm curious about that. But it might also just be for different types of list views, like you said, for community public list, but
Hey,
would be
Jen,
public,
you want to
right?
go back to that screen?
Yeah, thanks.
I have a little
So,
drop down
so
that
yeah,
allows me to
click
see.
into where it says search for public groups.
Mm-hmm.
I get a little drop down to the left there that lets me select
Roles.
roles.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I must not have that configured so that I don't have that little drop down. I'm also in a demo org, so maybe it's just my demo org. But
Or
Yeah,
that's
maybe you
good to
don't
know
have
that this
access
is
to
the
see
spot.
roles and
Maybe I don't. I'm not sure. I will look into that, but
I'm seeing the same thing as
okay.
Brian.
Good. Good. Then it's me, not you. So I think it's just making sure that for those that need to be able to select roles and role hierarchy, that they have this permission so that they can
Yeah,
continue to do that when they're editing those public lists.
thank
Okay,
you.
good talk. All right, that's it for me. Any other thought regarding all of those topics? Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing. And Brian is going to be taking over to talk about flow.
what else am I going to talk about? That's all I ever talk about. That's all I'm good for anymore. Um, so yes, we're going to talk about flow, mainly because I like that this is the only Astro that's dressed up as me. Um, I guess one of the bigger things is this automation home concept. So this is a new homepage for, I guess, technically it's really only flow now because workflow rules and process builders out. Um, I've tried to come and use this but to be quite honest, I have not found a really significant reason to come to here versus just going to the flow tab and set up. But maybe it's just because it's just too new, and so I'm just used to doing one thing or another. But I don't, other than being able to say, "Hey, here's your flows up above, and here's your errors." I don't see anything alluring to go. You know what? I should really change my habits and go here instead. But it's there. I would say go check it out yourself, and maybe you have a different experience than I do. Moving on.
Can't take it. Teach an old dog new tricks. Is that what I just heard?
What can I say? I've been doing this for over a decade. I'm old.
I've been trying to
I'm
use it.
crotchety.
I do like the ability of like the list view and how I can quickly see what's active versus like it's just a little bit of a prettier view, but
I I'm more amused because this automation home something that I've been waiting for literally years. Back when Bill Takacs and Shelley Erskig were the Flow product managers, which was 8+ years ago, I think it was. That they were talking about doing automation home, and now that it's here, I'm like, eh. um,
make sure you
I'll,
reach out to them and tell them that, hey, it's here. Meh.
Meh. um find the type of automation to build with these. I will show this, although I don't really call it a demo. Essentially what they've done is they changed the interface for how when you create a new flow, without using the flow trigger explorer, it kind of prompts you through a series of, hey, you could do this, you could do that. There's even a Einstein thing to let you, that Einstein will build your flows, but that of course is a product add-on, so I can't show that anyways. Um, you can view the elements by label, so not just the API name of the elements, but the label that you put in the nice friendly way in the toolbox. That's that left-hand panel that you'll see in the flow builder. It's essentially you hover over it and it shows you the details, which is kind of nice. Um, Automatic generated element names. So this is like, hey, I go and I grab a get elements and I created that. It will automatically name it. Um, I have not been able to get this to work. And I don't know if this is Brian's doing something really stupid because he's used to building things a certain way, or if it's not working. From what I can tell, you don't have to actually change anything. Um, the only thing that I've seen was like if I add get elements and then I left without putting in the required label and API name, it just labels it as something like getter element one, getter element two, which I would not consider being more easy. Um, Especially because the UI prompts you to say, "Hey, this is required." So I don't know. Um, I'm not a big fan of doing beta items and release notes just because I so much can change between when they're beta and when they actually become generally available. But something I wanted to mention is for screen flows, you're going to be able to add an action button on the screen. So think of like a quick action that you would see on a record page. You can add that to your screen and flow and have that call an auto launch flow. So essentially another screen flow or a different type of flow that doesn't have any automation into it and return the item. So I haven't come up with a really good use case for why I personally would want to do this, but what I've heard would be something along the lines of, let's say someone puts in a first name and last name and you want to go search for the contact, you can have them click the button, have a separate flow essentially launched behind the scenes, do your query, and then return with the ID of the contact, where then the screen that they click the button on automatically updates with that information. Um, I think it's a cool idea, but I haven't come up with a really good use case that makes me excited for it yet.
We have.
Yeah,
We've come
you
up
have.
with
What's your use case?
Yeah, we've come up with two of them so far, and I'm super excited about it. And I'm like desperately trying to know where my phone is so I can MFA into my sandbox and show you. But what we have is we have a flow that helps us with our agreement process and generating agreements out of the data in Salesforce. And one of the things we wanted is be able to preview specific fee schedules for our users so that way they knew what they would like, so they could preview it and actually get an idea of what was like coming or make a decision or whatever.
Hmm.
So we're using that button to do that call out to give us it on the same screen, utilizing actually we're utilizing the data table. But that's giving us the ability to allow them to see the data that they need with a click of a button instead of them having to hit next on a screen in a flow to get like another screen. And it's really kind of cool. And then we came up with another one too, just the other day where we were going to use it. And even though it's beta, Brian, it seems to be working pretty well for us. So I'm usually like, wait, it's beta, warning, warning, warning. But I would say if you've got use cases for it, use it because it's been working really well.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why I hesitate is because I've been in done enough betas
Yeah.
with Salesforce that the way things work or how it functions just changes dramatically between beta and generally available. Where
Mm-hmm.
like what
Yep.
you were doing has to be completely rebuilt. So like I think it's great for like playing around in sandboxes and dev but I really hesitate with trying to put that to critical function on a production environment. Um, but that's just me. Um, Debug changes. The big one is being able to debug schedule flows a little bit more differently. So in the previously, when you hit debug on a schedule flow, essentially what would happen would be that it would grab one record that matches your start and kind of get setting, and that's the record it would use for the debug. So it made it really challenging to test schedule flows because you didn't know what the record is going to be unless you were really narrowing down the scope of what your get was going to be for your schedule start item. Like what I would always end up doing would be I would literally make my filter be ID equals this, just so I knew what exact record it was going to be, which defeated kind of the purpose because then I wasn't really truly testing the entirety of the schedule flow. But now you'll be able to have more than one record being able through there, and you can actually choose, which I think is going to be a nice change up. All right, I'm gonna go through the list, and then we're gonna do some demos. Um, I'm a little bummed out that my little glasses and clouds, for some reason, are no longer aligned to the way
Oh
they were when I
no.
was viewing them. So pretend they look perfect. Um, the first one, this collect user input to build a list of records from a screen. Uh, I'm not gonna try to explain what this is here because I will tell you it confused the heck out of me when I was trying to do it, but I'll show it to you. Um, require user input on the address component, get address fill in more quickly with search, and using country, state and country pick lists. So these are all items that are dealing with the address field. So previously you couldn't have an address component on your screen flow be required, or it also didn't have the little search functionality so you can quickly like start typing in an address and have it fill it in like it does if on billing or shipping on the account page, and it wouldn't use state and country pick lists. That has changed, and now we're able to actually have to use those functionalities. And then um, being able to update choices on the screen in real time. That's uh, I'm just going to show the demo of that. So I'm going to stop here and we'll switch over to my demo org. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the demo. And I realized I think one of my bullets is wrong because the first thing that I was going to show you is the repeater section. So I personally like this. This lets you add a section where you can add multiple rows of data. So I need to bring up my little cheat sheet here on my left-hand side. So I'm just going to pretend that these are all terrible names for people. And 2 East Main Street, Madison, fills out my address. So previously to this, if I was going to create multiple records, I would have either a set of fields for every record that I could do, but it would be static, or I would have to hit the next button and then do some sort of kind of like loop in the flow. Now I can just click add and I get a whole new set of items. So now I can do Mallard's baseball and put in their address and Jen Bowen. And I have no idea where you are, Jen. So congratulations. You are now living at the Alliant Energy Center.
I don't know if that's enough square feet for me.
It's a good point. All right, so now I hit next. Oh, come on. All right, that's terrible. That did not happen during my demo. Just add one more here.
That's happened to me when I've had text too long in there. I've had to add some validations.
Oh, really? We'll have to see.
We used this recently for a form that collects the same things that apply to a bunch of individuals, and then it collects all the individuals' names. And it seems to be limited to 30. I couldn't get it to go past 30 instances, which is
Interesting. When I first built this and I tested it, I did 5 at one time with no issues. So I'm a little surprised that it's throwing an issue now. Okay, fine. Pretend that created a bunch of contacts. because that really makes the next thing that I need to see show required. I wonder if it's because I did not test this after I turned down state and country pick lists. That might be my problem. Oh, I need a third one, or this is not going to make any sense. All right. So the next one is basically being able to have the user create choices down below. So you'll notice right now that I have a checkbox field that's completely blank, and I have this lookup contact choices that is completely blank. But if I come in and I click on my one contact, suddenly my checkboxes show up. So I'm able to go from here's my full list to being able to display a subset of the selection on this screen without having to hit the next button, which I think is really cool. Don't have a whole lot of good ideas for how I'm going to use this, but I think it's a really cool setup. It took me forever to actually figure out how to get this to work. So we're going to start with this one, and I'll show you how it's set up, and then we'll switch over and I'll show you the repeater side of things. We'll flip over. So the repeater is just another little section here that you can add. You put your name in for it, and then you can drag whatever you want in here, and it will add. There are some limitations of what you can do. For example, if you are using a contact or a variable, I can't drag and drop fields from an S-object variable in here. It won't take them. But any of the standard components in here that I've tried so far have worked. So I can add checkboxes and I can add text and all that good stuff. That's all you have to do to basically make this a repeater is to have the section there and then have whatever you would want to have repeated within the section. If we look up above, what this results in is it turns it into a collection. So now that's why I have this loop. What I'm looping is the all the items out of that collection that got built from the repeater section. And so from here, you use it as a straight up standard loop. So all I'm doing at this point is for each of the items that were in the repeater, I'm creating a contact, adding that contact to a collection, rinsing and repeating for all the other items, and then creating all the contacts at once. So it's a pretty straightforward way to use it. And I'm really kind of scratching my head and wondering why it was throwing an error. I'm sure I just spammed myself with flow errors in my inbox, and I'll have to take a look at later. The choice items, this took me a little bit to figure out. So my first set is I went and grabbed all my contacts. But then on the screen, I have my first checkbox or set of checkbox, and that's the, hey, I need to go grab something. And in this case, I'm grabbing it from all my contacts. Right? Whatever this exports, it has to export a collection. Otherwise, it won't work. So this does kind of spit out a collection as part of its results. And then I create a collection choice set that is simply the basis of everything that was selected from that table. So this variable, all this is the results of what was selected in that first table. And then I can reference this choice set as the choices for my other checkboxes. So this is it's driving these two items, and the values change based on what was selected above. So it's a little bit kind of clunky because you can't build everything all at once. You kind of have to say, okay, I'm going to build the component that's your data table, or I guess checkbox group would work. Anything that results as a collection of the list. Add that component, leave the screen, build your choice collection choice set, and come back. Um, because I tried building it on the fly going here, and it didn't realize that this existed until I had already saved
Mm.
the screen once. So it's a little bit on the clunky side, but it does work.
Brian, can
Uh,
you is this set up where you could show us like the, I don't know if it is, like debug it so we can see what it would look like from like a user side?
yeah, we can find out why it's not working.
Maybe.
But actually, that's the repeater. This one works.
So
So
yeah.
getting the contacts, and there's nothing that's going to show up here because there's no new screen,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the data table component has two things. It takes here are what the values are, and it spits out what was selected. Right. So anytime, any place you have a table of stuff, so that's where I could use that table to create the choice sets to drive the checkboxes down here. So the debug doesn't really help from showing you how the pieces are.
Yeah, yeah, but it helps like understand the visualization of like if you're selecting it from here, it's adding it to your choice set
Mm-hmm.
um dynamically, which is cool. I don't
That
know
is
the use,
cool.
I'm not sure the use case yet, but I'm sure I'll find one.
Yeah, I mean, everything I could think of has been pretty banal. Like go select the here. Tell me all the contacts that you want to email. Who's the primary one that is the two, and everyone else is going to be a CC or something strange like that. But I like the
Mm.
idea behind it. Um, and then we can see here if I hover over the eye, now see the API as well as the label on some of
That's
these, which
nice.
is nice. The last thing I'll end with is just the new way that flow is created. So if you create new flow, instead of being presented with like, hey, do you want to create a scheduled record? It breaks this into, hey, do you want to use a template or start from scratch? I've yet to use any template for anything. But then if you go from start with scratch, then it kind of breaks all out all the different ones, including showing things that involve with orchestration, platform events, all the good stuff. Although most of the things I've done, it's always either a ScreenFlow record or schedule. Like most of the others almost never touch. So I never had to go scrolling down past that. Okay. So there's also some options to be able to change the screen components in your ScreenFlow so that the text are disabled or marked as read only, and you can do that dynamically, which I think is interesting. Another one of those things where I'm like, that's cool, but I can't think of a good use case for when I would want to do that because if I'm putting it on the screen, chances are it's because I want you to do something with it. Um, Configuring conditions with is blank and is empty. So these are your start conditions. So like if you're building a record trigger flow and you want to say fire this whenever there's no value in the phone number. Before you would use is null, and now they're standardizing it more to be the same as like with formula fields, so it's is blank. Or if you're dealing with a bunch of a list of items is empty. So it just makes it a little bit more standardized with everything else. Functionally, it works the same. If you have flows that are currently using is null, they're still going to work. Um, Check for duplicates before creating records and flows. So there is a I'm gonna show it because I kind of looked at this really quickly. Where's my create contacts? Is there's a option that will show up underneath to be able to let you check for whether or not a good Lord, my brain is just not firing properly. Be able to see if there's duplicates. It's only on certain of the component setup, and I unfortunately can't remember which one off the top of my head. So you can ignore the fact that I tried to demo something without having the demo set up already. Um, but it basically lets you call for your check the duplicate rules and matching rules that you have set up in the system before your automation actually tries to create a record. Um, the last little bit here for flow specific things is that the screen flows are going to have a little bit more detailed error messages that tell you what's going wrong. And unfortunately, I don't have a good example of this because they didn't really provide anything really decent in the text notes, but it's supposed to give you more information to help you figure out what's actually happening other than just the generic exception error message. Um, I'm still relying primarily on the debug or the emails that get sent out. Um, the last thing I'm going to end with here is just orchestrator changes. So, folks who are maybe not familiar with orchestrator, this is a semi-new automation type feature that is actually built on top of Flow. So it's using flows, but it's really about trying to manage a process instead of and transaction. So instead of saying, "Hey, I need to go update a field," or "I'm going to go create a task," this is about the entirety of the process where work may be handed off between multiple people or multiple team members. And so this is the orchestrator is what is managing the actual handoffs to say, okay, Jen's going to do this, and then when Jen does it, Diane's going to do this other bit. um, and some of these are kind of like a really nice kind of like quality of life, being able to like to suspend and then resume an orchestration. If you start a process and the orchestration is running and you go, "Oh, I have to stop this and I can continue," beforehand you were out of luck. You would just have to sit there and it would sit ignored for ages. But now you can just pause it and then start it again like you could with a flow working. If something goes wrong with an orchestration, and you were like in the middle of the entire process, there was no way to say, "I just need to pick up where I stopped." I fixed the error. I want it to pick up where I stopped. You would have to start from the very, very beginning. And if you have a long process where you're passing off a lot of different people, that was really annoying. But now you're actually able to say, "Well, the orchestration failed. I fixed whatever the data issue was, and now I can resume it and start it again." Um, a work item is essentially something that's part of an orchestration that's been assigned to you. And now if you get assigned more than one at a time, you can now select which ones you're going to complete first, which is kind of nice. And then the last two is just, hey, you can now use omni-channel for routing. And then the is blank is now also available in Orchestrator as well as it is in Flow. So that is all I have. Anyone have questions or anything they would like to see again?
I have a question, like with the repeater, is it still just like a one column screen view? You can't do multiple sections, or like you can't use the section
Oh,
component and repeater at the same time?
I don't know. Let's find out. Ba-da. Where's my share screen? Uh, does not look like
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
it does not look like it. Let me put this section in there.
I don't think it's gonna let you. It's hard to work with.
Well, it's hard to work with when my screen is zoomed in as much as it is. Yeah, it's not giving me the green drop down. So it looks like it needs the entire width of the page.
Gotcha.
Although I wonder if I could do the other way around. Can I put a section within a repeater? No,
Okay. They're not friends yet.
they're not friends yet. But I did figure out what was causing the issue. The problem was for
Mm-hmm.
what the country wasn't being set,
Mm-hmm.
and that's required with state and country pick lists. So it was because I enabled state and country pick lists and then didn't test it. Yeah,
You
go
make a
me.
change, you don't know what happens,
I
unless you
know.
test it.
I know. Sure. It was an example why you're supposed to do it. Uh, any other questions or comments? There's some not a real demo if something doesn't go wrong. That's right. Um, okay.
I don't think that there was any other questions. We will get this recording posted. We'll get the deck out to the Trailblazer community as well. And we'll also post out to the Trailblazer community if you are interested in demoing something for us in our next um, session. We would love to have you. So we'll get that posted so that you can comment and we can get a hold of you and things like that.
And it does not have to be a complicated thing.
Mine's not. Just saying. Mine's not complicated at all. But I thought it was kind of cool and I had fun building it. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody. We appreciate it and